Hi, my name is Maddie Johnson. I'm a part of Group 4 along with Joe Cunningham, Rebecca Nauman, and Courtney Sansone. And today we're going to be presenting our final project that is about germ warfare, specifically the case of anthrax. To start, I'm going to give a quick overview of what germ warfare is. Germ warfare is also called bioterrorism, and it is the release of biological agents or toxins that affect human beings, animals, or plants with the intent to harm or intimidate. These agents can get into our environment, into water sources, can get into food sources, and this can cause problems with human health, animal health, and the health of the environment. Germ warfare also poses a large threat to biodiversity because it can wipe out a bunch of species that are in a specific area. Humans, they can catch diseases such as smallpox, yellow fever, tuberculosis, and these can all be very severe or even cause death. Animals can be purposely infected with different agents, and it can be used to infect humans to spread any diseases and cause harm or death. Agriculture, water, and the forest areas can be affected by agents that can stay in the water or in the air for long periods of time. And all of these agents are used purposefully and are used to intimidate or try and wipe out any species or even humans that somebody wants to get rid of. There's been a long history of germ warfare. It has been used in many wars to decrease enemy numbers or to ruin enemy territory. It's also been used to contaminate drinking water and food sources of any military personnel. The focus of this presentation is going to be about a specific case in the United States, which is the anthrax case from 2001, about right after 9/11. And the code name that the FBI gave this case is the Anthrax case. Anthrax is actually a rod-shaped bacteria called Bacillus anthracis, and it can be found in soil naturally. Anthrax is infectious, but it's not contagious, so this means that it can't be spread from person to person, but you can still become infected with this bacteria. There are different ways that you can become infected. You can ingest the spores of anthrax by eating food or drinking water that has the spores. You can also get the spores inside of a cut or scrape, which then will go to your bloodstream. But the most lethal way to become infected with anthrax is by inhaling the spores, and this is what happened during the Anthrax case in 2001. In the United States, it's not very common for people to naturally be infected with anthrax because it's not found naturally in the United States. Our objective of this presentation is to briefly describe what germ warfare is and describe the dangers that it could possibly present. We want to introduce a case study of germ warfare. In this case, we're doing the anthrax case. And then we're going to explain the geographical location, ecology, epidemiology, public health, and the public health control of the anthrax case. And we also want to let our audience know the takeaway that we got from all the research we did on this case. As I said before, anthrax is not naturally occurring in the United States. So as we can see from this map on the slide, the United States is in the neon green region, meaning that there haven't been that many outbreaks between 2005, and 2016. But you can see some other areas of the world where they're marked in like yellows, oranges, and reds. So they have had more outbreaks between these years, and some of those countries it actually is more common for anthrax to be naturally occurring. So some of these areas include the Caribbean, Southern and Eastern Europe, Central and South America, Central and Southwestern Asia, and the Sub-Saharan Africa region. But the case that we're talking about today happened in the United States in 2001, shortly after 9/11. Spores were in letters mailed to 2 senators in Washington and 2 people who were a part of news and journaling who were located in New York.
So I'm going to be talking about the etiology of Amerithrax, and so where did it come from, right? So first off, the anthrax was weaponized and mailed to 4 people directly, but in the end it ended up affecting around 22 people because they were either in the area when the letters were opened or they were affected along the transportation process. And in the end, 5 people died due to exposure from the anthrax. It originated from Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is where the U.S. has their it's for defense, biological weapon defense research facility. And it was sent by Dr. Bruce Ivins for job security reasons because he saw that the supply of anthrax vaccines were going down, and the new vaccine that he was creating wasn't being approved by the FDA. So he thought that by creating a scare that would cause the public to worry about anthrax, it would actually allow the FDA to emergency send through his request to get more vaccines. And in the end, that's what happened. When the news broke that this was happening, the FDA fast-tracked for his vaccine to be approved, and he had job security, which was the main reason why he did it. He ended up blaming it, or like the letters were from Islamic terrorists, but his goal was not to incite fear of Islam. It was just that's who a great scapegoat was in a post 9/11 America. For those people who were affected, 11 were affected due to contact with skin, and 11 were affected due to contact with airborne, and it was inhaled when the letters were either opened or affected with these mailing machines. So all the anthrax came from the same parent strain of RMR 1029, and that originated from a field in Texas, and that's how they were able to track it when they were testing the samples of the anthrax in the letters. They found that it came from a specific strain that was only found in Texas, which was immediately sent to U.S. AMRID, which was that Fort Detrick base, and so it could have only come from this facility, and then it was refined into RMR 1029. And why this was so special was Dr. Ivins, he purified it to a level of 99% purity, which was amazingly toxic, and was so potent that it could kill incredibly easily. And they were able to rule out that this couldn't have been done at home because the level of equipment was so highly sophisticated that it only could have been done in a leading biolab by a handful of microbiologists. And when they were interviewing people, they being the FBI, when the FBI was interviewing people, many spoke up and said, I could have made this. I'm smart enough. But Dr. Ivins kept saying, no, I couldn't have made this. This is so great. But in his lab notes, he kept on telling himself that, like, this is so amazing how well of a job I've done cleaning it up. Because when he received it, he said it was super dirty and he had to get rid of most of it. It was unusable. And they were also able to pin this on him because he had unrestricted access. He was essentially in charge of this batch because he had purified it so well and he had put so much work into it that it was essentially his. And so they were able to track how often he had access to it, and especially when he came in off hours. And in the months leading up to and after the mailings of the letters, he was putting in almost 100 hours overnight or on the weekends in the lab where he would have had unrestricted access with no one else around. And anyone else who would have used this batch would have had to get permission from him. So anthrax is a preferred bioweapon because It's a low cost, it's easy to produce, it's easy to store, and it's highly fatal. So this is how it can be used in any circumstances to have a large catastrophic effect. But with this case, like I said, Dr. Ivans was able to get it to 99% purity. So it was even more highly lethal. And how he made it even more lethal was he was able to dry it. And this is illegal due to many treaties internationally. So he could have only done this without anyone watching him, which is why he had to come in on the weekends. And then as the letters were mailed, the anthrax had been dried, and so it was in a powder form, and so it was able to pass through the envelope because it was just a little bit of paper, which was then inhaled by postal workers as it went through machines, and it would spray up some dust, and that's where multiple victims came from.
What is epidemiology? Epidemiology is the method used to find causes of health outcomes and diseases in populations. The public health response depends on epidemiological factors. Example would be how long the agent stays virulent. The graph that I attached to this slide just shows how everything plays a part in ourselves and our genome and microbiome. So it can be as far as our environment trickling all the way down. What is germ warfare? This is just another term for biological warfare. Germ warfare are the products or pathogens that are meant to cause destruction in humans, animals, plants, or other living organisms. This could be the use of bacteria, fungi, insects, or toxins. The use of germ warfare is also known as an act of war. Many countries have used and or are creating biological weapons. The German army was actually the first to use biological warfare, amongst other things, to cause mass destruction. We're going to be focusing on anthrax. Another example would be botulism. How does germ warfare involve epidemiology? So during the introduction and infections, epidemiologists investigate the method of distribution, reproduction, and where it came from, and etc. Transmission of germ warfare could be as simple as from a river or even delivered on a train or by plane. Some germ warfare is pathogenic bacteria, meaning that it does not intend to kill the victim or organisms that they infect. This just allows for manipulation so that they survive and reproduce and infect more organisms. Without epidemiology, we would not know the cause or the measures that we need to take to protect ourselves or even build an immunity, such as creating a vaccination. In the picture that I provided on this slide, it just kind of gives you a short little breakdown of what they kind of do. So there's the cause of disease, where it spreads, the health impact, the disease frequency and the patterns, and then the socioeconomic impact of the disease as well. Epidemiology of anthrax. So this is a serious disease that is caused by a bacteria that is formed from spores. There's 4 different types. There is cutaneous infection, there's inhalation, GI, gastrointestinal, or injection. So it is rare in the US for us to see this, and it naturally occurs in certain wild and domestic animals such as cattle, sheep, camels, etc. We usually find anthrax in South and Central America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central and Southwestern parts of Asia, parts of Europe, and the Caribbean. It is not known to spread person to person. In the picture provided, we can see how the cattle can come in contact with the person. This can be from ingestion of the food products. This could be inhaling the dust. This could be in contact with the contaminated animal, like their hair, their hides. You could be cut by the animal that's already infected, and usually the cattle is contaminated by the soil that they're feeding and living in. Okay, and just to continue for the symptoms, so cutaneous is just a sore that develops into an ulcer, can appear black and the area does not typically hurt. You can see that with the picture that I have attached on the hand. It looks black kind of in the center. GI, usually there's nausea, loss of appetite, bloody diarrhea, fever, and severe stomach pain. Inhalation is cold-like symptoms, but this seems to be the most rapid, where you need to be treated ASAP. Inhalation of anything usually happens more rapidly and symptoms progress faster, and it can be more dangerous. Injection, it appears red and blistered at the areas of injection, and it could develop deeper into the tissues, causing further issues. There was also studies that I was reading about where the person was injected and it could lead to brain damage because it got that far. The treatment is antibiotics for 60 days. It could be shortened depending on when you were to get treatment. Public health management and control. This is the response mechanism. This involves medical treatments, epidemiological investigation, and prophylaxis. Medical treatments of anthrax are antibiotics, and this could be oral or IV. We have studied where this came from, found out it was coming from specific animals and areas. The prophylaxis would be utilizing gas mask. If we are entering that area, we could eat specific foods if possible, if we are in those areas, to avoid that contamination factor if we do not know. Maintaining a well-covered body with impermeable cloth to prevent that touching our skin. We could also get the vaccination now that is present. I've seen this a lot while I was active duty military. If we were to go across seas, they would give us all of our vaccinations for things that we might get overseas. In the diagram that I have attached, I really liked this one just because it broke down things very simple. We have our PPE starting at the bottom. So that is what we are doing to protect the worker. So that could be your safety glasses in lab. That could be like our mask when I work at the hospital. Things of that nature. Then you have your administrative controls. So this is how, when you change how people are doing things. And then you have engineering controls. So you isolate people from the hazard. So we're taking people away from anthrax. Then you have substitution. So you want to replace that hazard. You want to try and alleviate. Then we have the elimination factor of physically removing that hazard, which we have technically not done, but we have came up with protection mechanisms for anthrax.
So for critical thinking and the takeaway, the study has taught us the effects of germ warfare and how they are not always short-lived. Germ warfare agents can get into the air, water, food, and almost anywhere. Animals are even used often to get the agents to people, and germ warfare has commonly been used to decrease enemy numbers in wars. We can take away not only the meaning of germ warfare and epidemiology, but we can connect these to specific cases and see specifically how anthrax and epidemiology are tied. Our focus on anthrax provided us with the fact that it is an infectious, not contagious disease. These are often the types of diseases used in germ warfare. It is low cost, high fatality, easy to store, and easy to produce. Looking further to see if environmental justice and equity correlates with germ warfare or if germ warfare goes against it, well, environmental justice and equity would be to treat everyone equal and provide everyone with the same opportunities and way of life. Germ warfare goes against this in the fact that people are getting subjected to these biological agents in the intent to harm and or kill them. These acts go against any form of environmental justice standards in the view that targeting people, sometimes random, is not an equal opportunity for all. And then we look at epidemiology. It is present in these situations. We can look at the distribution and the risks that came with it and after it. And then looking at control strategies, we have available protective equipment like respiratory protective devices, full face masks, surgical masks, gas masks. We have battle dress over garments. We have gloves over boots. We can even get immunizations for it. So if we look at germ warfare, if it's sustainable, if it has any co-benefits, resilience. So with sustainability, we aim to sustain future generations to stay able regarding economy, the environment, health, etc. We have resilience, which is an ability to recover or bounce back from something tough. Co-benefits are benefits that come along with another, but not intentionally. So if we analyze this, germ warfare is not sustainable. We can also look at the future of an example, antibiotic-free era. When certain biological warfare agents are used, they can target every other strand of the virus or the relatives of it. The population being targeted by germ warfare can be resilient, but a strong and easily spread agent may change that. So to summarize our entire presentation and our focus of germ warfare, and especially anthrax, we can say the history of germ warfare goes pretty far back, and the first recorded case or study was 1347 and can be seen in many instances. It is a product or pathogen that is meant to cause destruction in humans, animals, plants, or other living organisms. It can include the use of bacteria, fungi, insects, or toxins. Germ warfare affects many subject areas, but we can understand its relationship with epidemiology. We can also see how public health management can allow us to take precautions in the spread of it. To make the study more specific and understandable, we used our example of anthrax so it could be better understood. And germ warfare use is considered an act of war.